Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod, a long look at the U.S. economy with Budget Director Phil Swagel.
We see lots of signs that the economy is weakening.
Looking out at the next 3 years of the American pocketbook.
The challenge is that both labor supply and labor demand are falling. So the break even for the monthly jobs number has got to be much lower. It's got to be much lower.
Right. And TV's biggest night, we're recapping the Emmys with Variety's Brent Lang.
If you look at who actually won here, the streamers absolutely dominated.
Plus, China cracking down on NVIDIA, TikTok parent ByteDance up against another divesting deadline, and New York Governor Kathy Hochul is backing Zohran Mamdani for NYC mayor, which leaves the rest of the Democrats to decide where they stand.
I think this is a fall in line scenario. Isn't that what's happening?
I think it is.
It is Monday, September 15th, 2025. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Overnight, China ruling that NVIDIA violated anti-monopoly laws in a preliminary investigation. China's market regulator there making that announcement in a one-sentence statement without elaborating. NVIDIA has previously disclosed it's facing scrutiny in China, where regulators have demanded it keep supplying local companies in return for approval for its acquisition of Mellanox. Now, that's a networking technology company that NVIDIA acquired in 2020. NVIDIA has said it may face penalties in China in that case. So you're looking at that stock off about 2.5%. Separately, China now launching 2 investigations targeting the U.S. semiconductor sector as well. China's Commerce Ministry saying just yesterday it has now opened an anti-dumping probe related to certain U.S.-made chips, the kind made by Texas Instruments and Analog Devices. A second probe focused on anti-discrimination rules. Those relate to U.S. moves in the China chip sector. Now, on Friday, the U.S. added 23 more Chinese companies to its entity list, which imposes restrictions on companies deemed to be acting contrary to national security or foreign policy interests. And so I don't know if this is tit for tat. I don't know where we are. I don't know how much of this is just about this negotiation that's taking place as we speak.
For NVIDIA in particular, is it simply that they are following the U.S. authorities' rules on these things, that they won't sell chips to Chinese companies because they've been told they're not allowed to?
Unclear to me exactly what's going on.
Just be glad that NVIDIA bought that company. Mellanox. Whose idea was that?
Terrible name.
Well, I just think it's if you eat something really spicy.
Oh, I thought it sounded like melanoma. Even worse.
It sounds like either it's bad. U.S. and Chinese officials began a round of trade talks in Madrid yesterday. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, and U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer met with their Chinese counterparts in the 4th meeting in 4 months. Among the topics under discussion, the fate of TikTok. The platform's owner, ByteDance, faces a deadline of September 17th, just a couple days from now, to divest its U.S. operations or face a U.S. shutdown. Last night, President Trump said he could again extend the deadline or, in his words, let it die.
Let what, TikTok die?
TikTok die, yes.
TikTok die. In the last hour, U.S. officials in Madrid told Reuters the Chinese delegation came into the talks with a fundamental misunderstanding of the U.S. position on TikTok, and they said many technical aspects of divestiture of TikTok assets have been worked out. But Chinese officials have attached demands on U.S. tariffs as well as technology restrictions.
In order for that sale to go through.
Right.
On this week's Squawk Planner, the Fed is in focus. We've got that FOMC kicking off a 2-day policy meeting tomorrow. Speaking to Reuters yesterday, President Trump said, "I think you have a big cut. It's perfect for cutting." Economists are widely predicting a 1/4-point interest rate cut with a slimmer chance of a 1/2-point cut. Also of note, the Senate is set to vote tonight on whether to confirm President Trump's pick, Stephen Myron, to replace Adriana Kugler on the Fed's Board of Governors. If all the former steps proceed, Myron could have a say in this week's meeting.
And he's going to keep his job.
And he'll keep his job at the White House, at least
Go
temporarily.
on a leave.
It was supposed to be a 4-month position.
Seems so problematic.
Yeah.
I mean, this goes to a
Working for the White House, right? Yeah.
You're working for the White House, you're on the Fed. And what do you make
It
of
would
the
be
Lisa
new.
Cook news over the weekend?
That
She apparently said it, but then when it came down to the rate she got, she did get the primary residence rate. So it's nice to, I don't know. It is the first time it's looked like lenders were aware, at least, that it
Well, this goes
was
to the
going to
issue.
be a
If the lender
vacation.
actually knows, what I don't understand about this is if this is true, which it looks like it is, why she didn't say this almost immediately.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the only problem with this whole situation.
you think it could be an oversight that she goes, hey, wait a second, this is not a primary residence, when they actually did the mortgage, which allowed her to get the lower payments.
Say that again?
She, when the final documents were done and it said primary residence, why didn't she say, no, that's not right, I told you this was vacation home? Instead, she was able to get the lower rates that you get from having it as a primary residence instead of it. When push came, when the rubber met the road,
Well, this
she
goes back to
still
what-
allowed it to advantage her.
This goes back to whether the bank was defrauded or not. That's the whole art. The whole thing is whether she lied to the bank. That's the whole story.
Right, but on the mortgage app, if she didn't say, no, wait, hold on, then
But if her mortgage broker, for whatever reason, knew that it was a vacation home because she was listed as a vacation home, which now there's documentation that she
whether
did.
it was the mortgage broker's fault?
I'm just saying I don't understand enough about what's happened here, and the truth of this is a question of whether you defrauded somebody or not. So if they were aware of this, for whatever reason, and they decided to offer her this rate, I can't tell you what the story is, but I'm just suggesting to you that there's clearly more to it. Seems like.
Maybe. You don't know a lot about it, but you're willing to take her side as a default position.
I've not for the last 4 weeks.
No, I know, but
taken-
now. So the odds...
Now that there's
No, I don't know.
Andrew did
know.
raise the question, why didn't you say this earlier? If the-
I've said the whole time, why didn't you say this earlier?
You mean, why didn't she say, I said it was
I've
a
said from
vacation
the
home?
very beginning that the issue that if she's innocent, I would have thought within the first 72
She would have said
hours
what?
or week she could have come out and said, "This is all a misunderstanding. I listed it as a vacation home. They asked me to list it this way or this, whatever the explanation is. I don't know what the explanation is, and that would have been a lot better. Clearly, and I don't know. I shouldn't say clearly anything. She had a lawyer who told her not to say a word until now.
Right.
Why that is, I don't know. I'd love to know.
There is a court that could rule as late as tonight as to whether or not she'll be allowed to vote in this FOMC meeting, whether she'll be...
Crazy, because there's 12 votes on it. None of it's really going to matter for Myron or for her.
Yeah.
You know how we go like this? January, February. March,
Yeah,
April,
you're supposed to start from the other side. Start from
You are.
Becky. Yeah.
So the Romans had the same problem, because March 15th is obviously the odds. September 13th is the odds. So I said that, yeah, March, May, July, and October are the 15th. Everything else is the 13th.
May, July.
So I was incorrect. I have to, I'm sorry, I don't waste time, but if I'm factually wrong, it's not the odds of September, Andrew. Will you remember that?
I try not to. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has endorsed Zohran Mamdani in the New York City mayoral race. In a New York Times op-ed, she said she had frank conversations with him in the past few months and had disagreements, but she characterized him as a leader who shares her commitment to the future of the city. And we've all been sitting around debating this issue, guys, this morning about her decision to do this, what it means. We're all wondering whether Eric Adams is going to step down or take himself out of the race.
Would that mean Cuomo would win or still not?
I think it would be hardly a toss-up even there. I think you'd have to get Sliwa out of the game as well before you'd even have a neck-and-neck kind of race. And so the question...
And by the way, Cuomo told us last week when he was here that if anybody wanted to be off the ballot, I think they had to do it. There was some question around it, but it was potentially by last week.
So
do it.
The
Otherwise
other thing is, it's possible the name is still on the ballot.
Even if you pulled out.
That confuses the voter to begin with. I don't know what's going on here. I will say I was in shock last week. I still am in shock about this one. I don't know if you saw. He doubled down. This was about, I think, on Friday. in an interview with the New York Times
Netanyahu?
that
No,
if Netanyahu were
he'd be
to come to
arrested.
New York, by the way, could come to New York to go speak at the UN or something else, that he would have the New York PD, the NYPD, arrest him.
I know.
Which would put him, by the way, in direct conflict with the federal government, which of course doesn't acknowledge, he said that he's a war criminal, doesn't acknowledge the international justice.
Unless he got rid of the police,
court.
then the social workers would be trying to arrest Netanyahu. This is Alexander Hamilton's paper, but it's still funny. That's why you have to say that. But the question is, does Hakeem now? Is everybody coming line now that
I think this is a fall in line scenario. Isn't that what's happening?
I think it is. But there are plenty that haven't yet, like some shred of respectability they're maintaining.
Okay. This is an interesting thing. I was looking this up because I wasn't sure. I thought this was the case. The United Nations headquarters is technically located on U.S. soil in New York City, but the land is technically extraterritorial. So if he took a helicopter to the UN, the New York PD couldn't come arrest him.
Maybe, but there's really no way to get there. And what I don't understand is if you're the mayor of a city, and the whole point is to represent the people of the city, what the people of the city think about what's happening in the Middle East is sort of not the story. The story is deal with the subways, deal with sanitation, deal with the school system and education, deal with the stuff that the city and citizens care about. And who knows, by the way, what the perspective of the New Yorkers is on Israel and Palestine. Unless you're having a vote by referendum by the
you don't want
the folks who live here.
Really
tells you what his view is.
You really don't want him focusing on those other things in the city because all of his ideas about how to fix them are going to make.
No. But I think the responsibility of a mayor is those things.
Right.
I think taking international positions on what the way the universe should look like is not the role of a mayor.
No.
Historically,
Right.
and it would put, by the way, New York in a direct fight, effectively, with the federal government. And is that what New Yorkers want? I don't know. Maybe they do, but I can't imagine that that's the case.
Push comes to shove. Does this young man who seems smart and very capable, he's got no experience running anything. Does he really have any business being the mayor of New York, Andrew?
Well, I think this is the fundamental question. Putting aside all of the different issues around what you think his position on Israel or Palestine is, or what you think his perspective is on.
The first thing he's ever done is run his campaign. It's doing pretty well.
Well, and the question, but the question is, could he run the city and run it well?
Right.
And that is the fundamental question. But what surprised me about the Bibi Netanyahu comment was this is a guy who, since winning the primary, had appeared to be moving to the center, had been trying to placate business folks and folks who didn't agree with him and said he wanted to be inclusive and this and that. And so then when he came out with that comment, which of course is relatively divisive, I would imagine, but maybe not. Maybe the world's all moved into a different direction. I'm not sure. But if that's the case, it just surprised me because I thought there are people who would go, I don't know.
Maybe it didn't poll well.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Maybe it's a polling thing.
Right.
Cheese will be next.
Coming up next on Squawk Pod, the man who referees budget fights in Washington. OMB Director Phil Swagel crunches the numbers on the true cost to the economy of tariffs, legislation, and higher prices.
Inflation since January has come in a bit higher than we expected.
Oh, it has?
It has.
So it's higher than you expected.
It's higher than we expected at the end. That's right. It's lower than what Wall Street expected.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod.
Stand Joe by. 3, 2, wipe up to him. His mic. Cue.
President Trump just posting on Truth Social. Governor Kathy Hochul of New York has endorsed the little communist Zoran Mamdani running for mayor of New York. This is a rather shocking development and a very bad one for New York City. How can such a thing happen? Washington will be watching this situation very closely. No reason to be sending good money after bad. President DJT.
The Congressional Budget Office is projecting higher inflation and unemployment this year, with slowing economic growth ahead. Joining us right now to discuss it is CBO Director Phil Swagel. And Phil, thanks for coming in today.
Yeah, Becky, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
So the new numbers, the new estimates take into account several things. One is population growth because of immigration. You're anticipating that it's going to be significantly lower. The other is the one big beautiful bill, what the costs are associated with that. And I guess the costs are higher. And that's the two impacts that we have on these numbers.
No, that's right. And we have the bill, the reconciliation bill, is boosting the economy, and immigration is slowing it down. And then the effects of the tariff are both raising inflation and slowing down the economy, both businesses and households facing the drag from the tariffs.
I mean, I think about trying to compute all of these numbers with the many, many moving pieces that you have. It's a pretty complex situation. And I would imagine it changes on a pretty daily basis. But let's focus on population growth first, because that probably plays into the jobs numbers that we've been getting. And that's kind of front and center for what the Fed is going to be deciding this week. What do you see with those population numbers?
No, that's right. And the challenge for the Fed is that we have both labor demand going down as the economy is weakening, but labor supply is falling dramatically. And we have our population numbers that you mentioned look to be several 100,000 fewer each year over the next 10 years, and something like 1 million fewer this year alone. And that's from the change both in the law that was passed on July 4th, provides more money for enforcement and the wall and things like that. But since January 20th, the administration has put in a series of administrative measures that have really stopped people from coming in across the border in the way that they were the previous 4 years. And, look, there's lots of issues around that, but for the economy, it means fewer people and fewer workers.
Does that suggest that the jobs market is healthier than we may anticipate, given some of these reads? Because the unemployment rate's still 4.3%.
Yeah, that's the challenge, is that both labor supply and labor demand are falling. So the break even for the monthly jobs number has got to be much lower. It's got to be much lower. Right. But still, we see lots of signs that the economy is weakening, and that that obviously the Fed is seeing that as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to square that up with what we just heard from Ed Yardeni. He looks at it and says, yeah, maybe we'll get a 25 basis point cut, but he thinks that we're basically at neutral levels now.
The labor market data has been weak. There's been a downward revision, but I don't think the GDP numbers are going to get revised, so I think the productivity numbers are going to get revised up. If we've got now productivity-led economic growth, then interest rates are basically where they should be. If they lower them, then the risk is that you get a melt up in the stock market, and then you get a meltdown.
He's a pretty straight down the middle guy who just looks at markets and by the way, thinks the markets are going to continue to grow for the next several years pretty effectively.
Yeah, no, I mean, Ed is really interesting because he sees the complexity in this, and that's one of the challenges for us. And you talked about how the economy is changing minute by minute, and policies are changing, and we see the tariffs changing day by day. There's a lot of uncertainty in the economy.
Yeah, how do you even put the tariffs into this? What are your assumptions?
So we essentially follow what the administration is doing really day by day, and we have a team at CBO that does the modeling of this. Whatever they do, we look at it, we wait until the dollars hit the Treasury statement, and then we assume that those policies will continue out forever.
What happens if a judge rules that these tariffs, or at least many of them, are illegal?
The Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court, right. This is now in front of the Supreme Court. It's one of the key uncertainties in the economy. That is
Have
both.
You run the
what
numbers?
Would you do? You don't count them anyway, right?
No, we do. So we
But
count,
you don't count it in terms of deficit reduction.
No, we do. So
do.
we have the tariffs that the president has put in place since January 20th. We have those reducing the deficit by $4 trillion over the next 10 years.
Wow.
So it's $3.3 trillion of revenue, and then $700 billion of averted debt costs. So that would be a big reversal in terms of the deficit. On the other hand, it'd be lower inflation and probably higher business investment, higher consumer spending.
So net, you still came up with that the tariffs were going to increase it. Oh no, it was the OBBB was going to increase the deficit by $4 trillion.
That's right. It's by 3.4 trillion plus the
debt service
Did
cost.
you
debt
offset
service.
it with the tariff stuff?
No, we will. In our future budget updates, we will do that arithmetic, putting everything together in the same place. For the score of the bill, we only look within the four corners of the bill, and that's where the tariffs are separate.
The bill, you said, would increase the deficit by 3.4 trillion from
That's right.
2024 to
You'd get
34,
4
but then you say the debt service costs added up to 4.1.
The additional.
With the additional,
Exactly.
adds it up to 4.1 trillion.
Exactly.
That assumes that interest rates are at what level? Because that's a big factor in all of this,
key.
too.
No, that's a key. So we have, for that cost estimate of the bill, we were using our economic assumptions that were made on January 17th. And that's the budget rules, right? That's what Congress tells us to do. We will be looking at it again now and see, what is the trajectory of interest rates?
The president wants it 300 basis points lower.
Yeah, I mean, we do expect the Fed to cut interest rates. We have 75 basis points of cuts between now and the end of January. So we do expect that to happen. There's just kind of so much going on in the economy, it's hard to know where it will end up.
Do you make judgment calls as to whether tariffs are good and for the economy? Do you make judgment calls about one big beautiful bill? Like, how do you come down on it?
Yeah. So what I tell members of Congress is that they get our analysis and not our opinion. So I will tell them, here's what it does to the economy: tariffs, higher inflation, higher revenue, slower growth. Whether that's good or bad is up to the Congress, to the president, now to the Supreme Court. So we're looking at just the budget and economic effects, and not whether it's the right thing.
Have you run the numbers as to what would happen? Like, do you run different scenarios if the Supreme Court were to overturn those tariffs?
We haven't done that yet. It's
Really?
implicit. We haven't said, well, if the Supreme Court does that, what would happen to the economy? I mean, it's implicit in the $4 trillion of revenue, $4 trillion of revenue plus net interest costs. That would reverse over the next 10 years.
So would inflation?
Inflation would be lower. I mean, this is a
But
3.3
you literally
trillion
haven't run these numbers, or you don't want to tell them because you don't.
No.
Yeah.
In our economic assumptions, we look at the law as it is now. And that's what Congress has told us to do, to say, tell us the baseline, assuming current law. Current law plus current policy has the tariffs. If those are reversed, we will certainly do that arithmetic. And it's going to, again, it's a mix, right? Because it's less revenue, higher deficit, but it's like a big tax cut on businesses and households.
In terms of the inflation numbers that have surprised so many people on Wall Street, has it come as a surprise to you? Or how often do you tweak those numbers?
We do. So we update our forecast just a couple times a year, generally 3 times a year. That's what we did just last Friday.
Yeah.
Inflation since January has come in a bit higher than we expected.
Oh, it has?
It has.
So it's higher than you expected?
It's higher than we expected at the
what...
end. That's right. It's lower than what Wall Street expected, but higher than what we expected. And it's probably the tariffs, right? The economy has been weakening over the course of the year. And you'd expect that to lower inflation, but the tariffs have probably been pushing up inflation. Not by a lot, but by enough to show up in the
Where
numbers.
else are your assumptions far different than Wall Street?
Now that's a good question. The biggest change would be that by law we assume current law, right? So we don't assume future changes in fiscal policy. And Wall Street naturally does.
Right.
So at some point, there has to be either lower spending or higher taxes. And we don't assume that because Congress wants us to tell them what's the situation under current law.
Right. That's interesting. Phil, thank you for coming in. We always appreciate talking to you.
No, thanks so much.
How come you have 2 L's? I've never seen Phil with 2 L's.
It's funny. It's just childhood.
Well, Philip, there's a lot of Philips that have.
There's lots of Phils, but
Philip
the
said
short.
Phil, but you ever
this-
seen Phil?
Yeah.
P-H-I.
Well, that's how you know if somebody
Actually, I
really
think-
knows me.
Wow.
If they
I
spell
think
it with
Mary-
one L, then they don't really know. me.
Mary
They don't-
Erdos's husband, Phil,
they
I think
don't know.
spells
Did I spell it
P-H-I-L-L.
correctly in Too Big to Fail?
I think you did.
Good, okay.
Yeah. Someone.
His
I
character.
can't say that
Yeah.
for sure, but I'm pretty sure after looking at
Yeah.
it last week that he spells it with 2 L's.
Makes
Yeah.
4 consonants in a vowel. It's rare.
Yeah. How's your daughter's doing well back on the Hill?
We're still on TV, though.
Oh, we're
Coming
still-
up, we'll discuss this later.
Next on Squawk Pod, an Emmy Awards recap and a reality check.
I don't know. I've never seen SVU. Do people watch any of that? I'm old. I don't watch that.
SVU? Where do you live?
Variety journalist Brent Lang on what he's watching, and it's bigger than streaming.
This is not a normal regulatory environment. When you're talking about people having really personal relationships with the president, and that will determine whether or not something stays or goes. I mean, that's a very different, uncharted territory. And when you look at how that Paramount deal went down, I mean, that is not a normal way that a deal gets approved.
This is Squawk Pod.
Stand Andrew by in 3, 2, 1. Up and Andrew. Cue. Ms. Mike.
You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC on this Monday morning. I'm Andrew Sorkin along with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick.
Joining us now to recap the Emmys. I guess we can do that. Variety executive editor Brett Lang. I guess we can keep it to streamers versus legacy versus linear, because I did see the first 5 minutes. I admit it, Brent. I'm not usually up that late. But they made fun of streaming. I think they said another way to lose money, didn't they?
Yeah, they certainly did. But I mean, if you look at who actually won here, the streamers absolutely dominated. You had Netflix that tied with HBO and HBO Max with 30 wins. And then Apple comes in and gets 20 wins, including a record number for the studios. So I think it just shows that the momentum has really shifted here towards streaming players and away from broadcast, which was almost non-existent last night.
What won? I didn't look at everything that won. Did any of the linear offerings win? Has anyone watched that? I saw Ice-T interviewed before. Then the guy called him a legend, and I'm like, I don't know. I've never seen SVU. Do people watch any of that? I'm old. I don't watch
SVU? Where do you live?
You would watch linear.
SVU?
You would watch linear TV on just a standalone episode about some stupid murder?
Yes.
I think I've seen
Where have you been?
I would watch a Dateline.
It's been going on for 2 decades.
years.
Are you crazy?
Is that a Dick Wolf?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't.
Hi, Brent. It's nice to see you.
You haven't watched it in how long? When's the last time you watched
I haven't seen it in a
an
few years, but I've
SVU?
probably seen all of them.
Much more recently.
You know
than
where
that.
I've seen a Law and Order?
Where?
In Davos.
In Davos.
Okay. Well, then
And I'm trying to read their lips.
You're way behind.
You know the difference? I'm not behind. I watch sports, which is something you don't have a problem with, obviously. But go ahead.
I want to know, Brent, about what the reaction in Hollywood is of Hannah Einbender and I think there were a couple others. I was doing Bardeen also saying "Free Palestine" on the on the stage. And then meantime, you saw over the weekend, I think it was, or maybe late last week, Paramount actually coming out with a statement on the other end of things in support of Israel and against some of the actors and others who were trying to boycott using Israeli writers and other things.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an issue that's absolutely fracturing Hollywood right now. I mean, you have a lot of people who are very, very supportive of Israel and who really see this Free Palestine movement as being, anti-Semitic. And I think then you have another part that is really upset about the violence in Gaza and what's going on there. And you're having a fracture very similar to what's happening in the Democratic Party, but it's happening in Hollywood. And David Ellison, like the Redstone family, actually is a very big supporter of Israel. So I think what you watched last night is what's happening across the industry.
And is it fracturing what's actually happening in Hollywood, or is this just in terms of how we're seeing it play out? Meaning, are there projects you think that are either being greenlit or killed as a result of this?
Well, I know that there have been films that have not been submitted, that have not been accepted into film festivals, and I'm sure that there are certain projects that might have difficulty getting backing, and there also, may just be certain issues with talent. Certain people, right, because of their political persuasion, may have more difficulty getting backing.
Brent, also, I don't know if this is on your bingo card because I know you were coming on to talk about the Emmys, but the other big conversation in Hollywood right now is the potential merger, prospectively, depending on what you believe, of Warner Brothers, Discovery, and of Paramount together. What do you make of that? What are people saying?
Well, I think this is, potentially a very transformative deal. I mean, there's a lot of hurdles that still need to be overcome before that happens. It's unclear if this will be appealing enough to David Ellison. But, if you look at this, what they're trying to do here is really lean into streaming and compete with Netflix. So if you combined Warner Brothers and its library and Paramount and its library and its streaming subscribers, you'd have about 200 million streaming subscribers, which would be more than Disney and Hulu. It would be less than the 300 million of Netflix, but it at least gets you in stabbing distance there. I mean, I think the larger problem is just issues that are facing the media industry right now, and it's unclear if you can kind of manage the decline of cable, which is absolutely the major source of revenue for a company like Paramount, while transitioning to streaming, which is at best a break-even proposition right now.
Brent, what do you think the chances are that somebody else jumps into the fray for Warner Brothers Discovery? And I'm thinking to myself about Netflix. Would Netflix ever try to buy out all of Warner Brothers Discovery and then later on sell some of the pieces? Would the Netflix shareholders like that, accept that? I don't know where you think Comcast and potentially Peacock land in all this. I don't know whether you think regulators would allow that. How do you sort of square all those circles?
Well, I think you absolutely will have other bidders for this asset. It's just such an attractive asset when you look at the library and the legacy. I would say that Netflix has kind of avoided these types of deals in the past. They've kind of stuck to their own knitting. I'm not positive they would be interested in that, but I think you'd at least have other bidders, potentially Sony, Apple, absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazon, which has been more acquisitive, I think they could do something like that. And then you're absolutely right. I mean, what is the regulatory environment going to be like here?
None of that terrible linear stuff won anything, Sorkin, except for Matlock, which is ridiculous. But that's streaming now. That's not even on linear anymore. You know what won? Jeopardy. That's the only, and Stephen Colbert, so they could give him,
it's what you watch every night.
So they could give him a.
Okay.
Do you want to interview? Do you really want this guy?
Yeah,
okay.
Brent, we're having a fascinating conversation about what's happening with these deals and what's going to happen here.
It's about Emmys. You love Emmys, don't you? Were you there?
I was not there. I'm here. Brent, in terms of these other players, do you think regulators would? I mean, it's clear to me that Paramount should have the angle on the regulatory front, given the Ellison family connection or just relationship with this administration.
You ask poor Brent about crony capitalism. He's a variety guy, for God's sake.
Yeah, no.
All right, is it crony capitalism, Brent? You hate Trump?
I didn't ask him that. What are you talking about?
I'm not going to get into my politics, but I mean, I think what you're talking about, Andrew, is very illustrative. This is not a normal regulatory environment. When you're talking about people having really personal relationships with the president, and that will determine whether or not something stays or goes. I mean, that's a very different, uncharted territory. And when you look at how that Paramount deal went down, I mean, that is not a normal way that a deal gets approved. So.
Yeah, but it does raise the question of once you start to see a media buying frenzy, does it change? Like you said, other people very likely could jump in. I think it may recalibrate how a lot of people think about all of these things, right? If there are a certain number of assets left, if the dance is on, the dance is on.
It's not unprecedented. I mean, Elon Musk didn't get invited to an EV summit from the Biden administration. All right, there's crap that's been happening forever on this front.
Brent, I'm going to thank you. I'm going to continue this conversation with my friend Joe. It's great to see you. Before we go,
you got a variety reporter.
No, I understand, but look. Brent knows more about Hollywood. He's been a brilliant writer about everything that's been going on there. The difference, though, and I just want to make this point, if I could, the difference between, and look, I'm very critical of the fact that the Biden administration didn't invite Elon Musk to the EV summit and did certain things to advantage unions and other things. No question. No question.
For 4 years, it was every day the criticism of the Biden administration. I remember.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
The distinction, though, between the sort of what some people look at as a shakedown, if you will.
Are you talking about Paramount now? Or?
I'm talking about whatever you thought of the 60 Minutes lawsuit, which people didn't think was
totally justified.
I think
was it a Harvard shakedown?
I don't know any lawyer.
After what we're seeing,
I don't know any lawyer who thought that case was a winnable case. But it became a winnable case.
Evidence. It's empirical. You're going to tell me that now?
No, I'm just saying it was. I don't think that on the merits anybody thought it was a winnable case.
Then they shouldn't have settled.
Well, the conundrum was, and this is where the president has been able to create leverage for himself, is that it wasn't about the case itself. It was ultimately about whether that merger could go through, and therefore he was able to create leverage in his own way.
Fine.
That's all I'm suggesting.
The Rorschach test.
All I'm suggesting is that there have been many instances now, whether it's
All I'm
Intel,
suggesting is
whether it's
if you
AMD,
go back in time,
NVIDIA.
it's not that different than what we've seen all along.
I don't think that that's the case. I think this is a much more aggressive administration. You don't think so? When's the last time you had?
Last time, I guess, when they went into Facebook and said, "Don't say it was from a Wuhan lab." When they went in and said, "Don't talk about the laptop." When they went in and said, I mean, Zuckerberg came out and admitted.
I'm not suggesting to you that there has not been influence peddling
by. Always has
but
been.
The question is, at what level do you believe that these administrations actually went to try to injure the companies as a result,
I think
or
it'll
take
be,
stakes
I
in
think
them,
it'll be
or do other
harder
things?
for the administration to say yes to David Ellison's bid and no to anybody else who comes in, because then it will reek of crony capitalism. I think if other bidders come in, they might not. But I think that's why I think there's a frenzy that could build around this. Is like, wait a second, if the door's open, we all got to try.
The problem is you won't know.
Right.
On the regulatory side, you won't know until somebody actually makes the bid and accepts the bid. And the truth is, if you are the lawyers who are working for the target, in this case, Warner Brothers Discovery, part of the analysis is going to be, do I accept a potentially even lower bid than somebody else,
well, you have to have
because I think that the chance of the regulatory
you have to have a big
fee,
a big breakup fee for any regulatory things.
That's going to be a huge part of it.
It's going to be a big deal.
But my only point is, you probably are going to actually literally have to look at each one side by side.
No, I mean, you could make guesswork on all these things.
That's the business. That's
what
always lawyers do.
Person? That's really all I care.
That's all that you care about.
Yeah. President Trump now again just posting on Truth Social. Subject to SEC approval, companies and corporations should no longer be forced to report on a quarterly basis, quarterly reporting, but rather to report on a 6-month basis. This will save money, allow managers to focus properly on running their companies. Did you ever hear the statement that China has a 50 to 100 year view on management of a company, whereas we run our companies based on a quarterly basis? Not good. I don't know what that would do for us.
It's interesting.
I don't know what I think of that.
Do we like doing it every quarter, or is it?
Look, I would love companies to think more long term. The question is whether you believe that reporting on a quarterly basis
provides enough transparency,
transparency, accountability, to the extent it's sort of a forcing mechanism for the markets and for these companies to do the right thing.
You're back to 7-minute abs. It'd be nice to have it every week. But we don't want to do that.
Well,
look, I think the bigger problem is trying to...
how'd the weekly sales go?
Yeah, but I think the bigger problem is trying to forecast what's going to happen down the road. You know, that's pretty useless.
It's already bad because...
Anyway.
I would also suggest one thing that actually will not be good.
What?
The one thing that will not be good is that the people who will succeed or have better information in this environment...
less democratized.
...will be both quote-unquote professionals.
Yeah.
And look, our job is to democratize, because
they'll be going into channel checks and all that kind of stuff.
People will be doing channel checks. They're going to have their satellites, which they already have. They already have a lot of this information.
Right.
They can see how many cars are parked in the parking lots. They can buy credit card information that the public can't buy. There's all sorts of ways to try to figure out what's going on. By the way, they'll go to conferences and other things where they get one-on-one meetings with the CEOs, and those meetings will all of a sudden be a lot more important
more valuable
than they were before, because of the
even with all that, analysts will still, cut their price target from 400 to 250 when the stock's at 200. They'll still be terrible at it.
That may be. The sell side.
And they got relationships that they're trying to cultivate and everything else.
Sure, all of those things. But that doesn't change what the buy side's doing. And the buy side is where the real action is.
It is interesting in that it gets at this idea of fewer and fewer companies wanting to go public, which is a problem. They don't have to, because there's so much money on the sidelines at this point. A lot of them say they don't like this hassle of having to report on a quarterly basis. Although I think it's probably the earnings calls and the things associated with it that are a bigger problem. Like, show me the numbers on a quarterly basis.
All I'm suggesting is I do think
You're right about
there's
the
a transparency issue.
Yeah.
And whether it's better to be on a 6-month basis, I don't know.
We've all talked about how it would be better for companies to focus on longer term.
Right. And look, some companies provide guidance, some companies don't provide guidance, and the investor gets to choose whether they want to buy into that vision or not.
We're one of the few news organizations that has an annuity every 3 months of a lot of stuff to cover for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I mean,
And you always love earnings.
And I love it so much.
You love it so much? Okay, good.
Like when the banks are going to come on that one Friday.
And well, I'll give
you know what I pray for? I pray Leslie
I'll give you a
Picker's
different
in there.
annuity.
That's what I pray.
I'll give you a different annuity.
And that is Squawk Pod for today. Thanks for starting your week with us. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern to get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears. Please follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great Monday. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.